Hello, I'm Matt Hoots with Raider Green. Thanks for joining us today. Natural daylighting is an essential part of a productive work environment, and also for your home it can bring a nice natural ambiance as well. I just attended Green Build and ran into one of our members, and they offered to help answer some of my questions about their product and also the importance of natural daylighting.
Yes, thank you for having us today. And yes, I'm Neall Digert, Vice President of Solatube International. I've been with the company now for over 20 years. I come to the company with a background in optics, daylighting, building energy, but more importantly, human psychology, physiology, and neurochemistry. So my specialty is designing spaces that make people happier and healthier. And daylight is a key part of that. So at Solatube International, we actually innovated what is termed the Tubular Daylighting Device, or TDD. So it's an optical system, top to bottom, that uses optics to effectively harvest, so collect daylight selectively from the sky, redirect it into an optical light guide to transport it through a building, and then ultimately deliver it to an interior space using what we would term a daylight fixture, which functions like a light fixture in the ceiling, but it's delivering all the critical nuances of daylight to the interior space without consuming any electricity.
Is the main function of your product to bring natural daylight to areas of the built environment that don't already have windows?
That's correct. So the nice thing about the Solatube product is, as an optical system, first of all, we're able to extract all the unwanted energy. So if you think about a window or a skylight that produces heat, or an additional cooling load on a building's air conditioning system, or requires additional heating in the winter months due to heat loss through the fenestration element itself. With a Solatube product, we are actually able to eliminate the heat and significantly reduce the potential for heat loss out through the product. So it's very energy efficient, but more importantly, from a lighting standpoint, we are able to transmit the wavelengths of energy that obviously we use to see, but more importantly, which drive us as beings. So you hit a very good point that LED lighting has become very energy efficient, but the key issue is that LED lighting is static. It is not a dynamic source. And we know that daylight is very different. It is a dynamic source. It is constantly changing, so the spectral content, the wavelengths of visible light that are present at any given instant, is being driven by what's happening outside. So what time of day is it? Where is the sun in the sky? Is it a partly cloudy day, a bright sunny day, or a diffuse day? That's all informing or driving the spectral content of the light. Our bodies are designed to actually perceive that. And that is actually what determines how and when we produce certain neurotransmitters and hormones that drive how we function over the 24-hour clock. Also, daylight is key in keeping us integrated in the 24-hour time period. If we didn't have daylight as a time giver or time keeper, our bodies actually start to operate at slightly different cycles or periods of time. So daylight is actually not only key for vision, but it is key for human health. And it's also key to keep us entrained and connected in the 24-hour clock, and allows us to be happier, healthier, and actually improves our psychology. So, so that's kind of the application of daylight. The second thing that's very important is, as you said, yes, with Solatube products, we can literally duct the daylight anywhere into a building. So we can collect the daylight or harvest the daylight from the rooftop and then duct it through a building, much like we would duct air through air ductwork. But we have basically a daylight chase or daylight tubing optical light guides that now distribute the light through the building. The most important thing, and why TDDs are very unique in the fenestration world, is that with the Solatube products, we can actually place the light with a high level of consistency within the space. So while we get the important fluctuations in light levels and color, or spectral content of light based on what's happening outside, the actual placement of light, so the where light is redirected into space, can be very consistent. So light levels rise and fall, Special content varies, which drives our psychology and our physiology. But from a perception standpoint, how we light the space remains consistent. So while the light levels may rise and fall based on what's happening outside, the brightness ratios, which is how we interpret the world around us, remains consistent. So yes, we're a perfect system for lighting interior spaces that maybe don't have access to daylight, but more importantly too, we are a very effective daylighting system to light perimeter spaces, offices with windows, where we can actually light the opaque architecture of the interior so that we minimize contrast ratios with the view glass, which allows then occupants to look out the windows without having glare, without having bright contrast between interior and exterior, and actually significantly reduces the operation or need for operation of blinds and controls. So as a result, the TDD is an amazing system or solution for lighting any space, whether it's interior or perimeter. And again, you can think of it as a daylight fixture. So we designed it in a very similar process.
What are some of the terms that we need to familiarize ourselves with regards to how humans interact with the built environment?
Oh, absolutely. There are a number of new terms that have emerged through the years. Now that we fully understand how the human circadian system and the endocrine system is being driven by the presence of daylight, as well as the progression from darkness to light back to darkness over the 24-hour period, key terms that have emerged are obviously chronobiology. So kind of defining how the 24-hour exposure to the environment starts to affect our human physiology and our biological processes. Another key term that we reference or are starting to use is chronospectral dosage. So think about, our exposure to spectral content of light, because our bodies actually crave different spectral content at different points in time over the course of the day. And it's really daylight that is the perfect light source, because that is what drives our bodies. And when we start to remove people from the presence of the very time-dependent spectral content of daylight, that's when we start to see issues with attention deficit disorder, with depression, and other common ailments in Western society. And so when we reintegrate people with daylight and really now use daylight to reinforce or inform the human endocrine system through chronobiology, we make people much healthier.
How does natural compared to artificial daylighting affect worker productivity?
Great question. Absolutely. So daylight is going to be obviously the reference lighting source by which all lighting systems are compared. So because it is a full spectrum source, so all wavelengths of visible light are present all the time when we have daylight, which is key. Also, what's very important is that as we're designing the lighting system, when we have daylight, the two important visual cues that actually keep us connected psychologically or engaged psychologically and mentally are the subtle rising and falling of light levels, so that dynamic rise and fall, as well as the subtle shifts in spectral content, actually keeps our brains connected and awake. So we are visual beings. 80% of our brains are devoted to processing the world around us. And when we put ourselves in a static environment, so let's say we're in a windowless environment with just static lights that are on consistently all the time, we have no sense of passage of time, and we don't have a dynamic stimulus to actually keep us mentally engaged. So if we look at school children as an example, so they're a perfect little microcosm that we can study, because when we take school kids and we put them in a windowless classroom, or a classroom that just has punched windows for the occasional view outside, but they're reliant on electric lighting, what happens is that within just a few minutes of that being in that static environment, the brains naturally start to shut down to conserve energy for the body. And so as a result, the teachers are having to be overly dynamic to keep them engaged and to keep them aware of what they're teaching. And so when we put them in a naturally lit or a daylit environment, we wake them up. We keep them engaged so the teachers now can focus on teaching, not entertaining. And so it makes school children significantly more efficient at learning the subject matter that's being taught. Same thing applies to the office environment. So when we put office workers, who are going to be the most valuable resource of any corporation, when we keep them mentally engaged and connected, they are more efficient. So we can see a 6% to 16% increase in productivity just because the people don't feel a need to get up, walk around, and wake themselves up by going to the coffee machine, talking to co-workers, etc. So just a 6% increase in productivity is huge to the bottom line of a corporation. And that is done because with daylight, we're keeping them mentally engaged, keeping their brains awake.
Is your product a one-size-fits-all, or do you have different options for our designers and architects to play around with in their designs?
So great question. So yes, we designed the Solatube products to actually provide a number of different aesthetics. When we look at Solatube, we are actually evenly applied across all building sectors. So whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, or institutional, basically any type of building that you can think of, we have a product family or suite of products that allow you to effectively apply daylight. So with that being said, we want to then give the end user and the architects or designers the ability to express themselves through design. So we have a wide range of diffuser types and technologies. Yes, we can do either a recessed or flush mounted fixture type, or we can actually have something that stands proud from the ceiling and becomes more of an architectural feature in the space. With that, while the form factors change, the diffuser technologies also allows the end user or the designer to choose the specific look or feel that they want. So we have some diffusers that mask the view to the outside, and they look more harmonious, perhaps, with the traditional electric lighting in the space. But yet, because of the nature of the light, people intuitively know it's different. They know that it's daylight. Then we have other products, an example being our OptiView diffuser, which is actually a radial Fresnel lens system that actually allows the occupants to actually have a view to the outside. So even though they may be a number of stories down or below the roof system, when they look up at the diffuser, the fun thing is that the optical tubing takes on the appearance of the sky. So it becomes blue sky and clouds, regardless of how long or how articulated that tubing system is. So when you look at the diffuser, you see blue sky and clouds right at the ceiling level. So the level of visual connection is really up to the designer and the occupant to choose. What do they want? What makes them happy? What do they connect with?
Even though you're penetrating the building envelope, it seems that your product is able to mitigate heat loss and heat gain pretty effectively.
Absolutely. So one of the key points that we're very proud of is that we want to make sure that the consumer and that the designers have all the rigorous engineering data that they need to effectively design their buildings. So we rigorously test our products to all of the fenestration standards. In fact, we actually have worked within the National Fenestration Rating Council for now over 20 years to develop standards for these new optical systems, because we are very different. So we have solar heat gain, U factor, visible light transmittance, air infiltration ratings for all of our products. So just an amazing set of data for the engineer to be able to use in the building design. But the fundamental part of the product, what makes it so efficient, is that we are a multi-glazed, fully sealed system top to bottom. We have multiple thermal breaks introduced through the system so that we don't have thermal conductance from the outside to the inside, or from the unconditioned attic to the conditioned occupied space of the building. So we don't have the air infiltration or exfiltration through the product. We have the ability to insert thermal breaks and insulated glazing layers to ensure that we isolate any heat transfer or heat loss right at the point where we have the insulation levels in the building envelope. And then also even the optical tubing itself, as well as the dome systems, are spectrally selective. So they are designed to only reflect or transmit the light that we see. They extract all the other wavelengths. So even our optical tubing, while it looks like it's a mirror, it's actually not. It is actually black on the inside because it has a low emissivity absorbing surface. So the optical surface is actually only reflective to the light that we see. It is fully transparent to all other wavelengths. And so any heat that makes it through the optics of our rooftop aperture will strike the surface of our optical tubing and actually pass through the reflective surface, get absorbed by the low emissivity coating, passes through the aluminum substrate, which gives the tubing its body, and then we have a high emissivity coating on the outside, which extracts that heat. So the tubing itself really doesn't heat up along its entirety. It will be highly isolated or localized. And so as a result, thermal gains or solar gains don't progress through the tubing. They get extracted at the very top of the system, which is very slick. So the product is a very high performing optical system, also just relative to aperture area. The nice thing is, since we're optical, we're able to use a very small aperture to collect a vast amount of daylight, so much more daylight than you would get from a horizontal skylight or even a vertical window. We can collect it, essentially concentrate it, if you will, and then drive it into the light guide to transport into the building and ultimately be delivered. So we can use, so as an example, if we're looking at here in California, you know, traditional design standard for a warehouse space might be to use anywhere from 3 to 6% aperture area for horizontal skylights. Well, with our products, they are so optically efficient at collecting the light and then driving it to or delivering it to where people are actually using that light, that we can actually design a building with 1% aperture area and extract all the heat from that 1%. So we're not adding cooling load. In fact, we produce about 1/3 the heat gain per lumen of light as compared to today's energy efficient LED lighting system. So we can reduce the cooling load just from a lighting standpoint by about 2/3.
Can your product go through an unconditioned space without affecting heating and cooling loads?
So the nice thing is with the product, the tubing itself doesn't have any insulation value to it. We can add insulation to the outside of the tubing if that's desired, but typically it's not needed. It's more wherever the insulation level layer is in the building envelope, whether it's at the roof deck or at the ceiling level. Our products are designed to incorporate thermal control systems. So what we would term our thermal insulation panel, which is a dual glazed, thermally broken element that gets inserted wherever that insulation is, whether it's the rooftop or ceiling level. And we can then prevent any, so if we have an unconditioned attic space, we can actually insert the TIP along with our other glazing elements and thermal breaks to ensure that the cold air from the attic doesn't actually get transmitted through the tubing system or through the Solatube product to the occupied zone or the condition.
So is your product able to provide light while reducing heat transfer through either radiation, convection, or conduction?
Yep, certainly from a U factor standpoint, absolutely. But we are actually controlling all forms of heat gain and heat loss through the product.
Are you able to minimize the amount of daylight that comes in during the daytime if you don't want a lot of daylight, just in case you're doing a presentation and you need to turn the lights off, but this one is still on?
We do. Thank you so much for asking the question. Yes, you're absolutely right. We don't want daylight all the time. And so in order to allow the space occupants to have control over their environment, we actually manufacture a product or a component, what we call our daylight dimmer. It is a system that uses, in the commercial arena, low voltage controls. So we would connect to a 0 to 10 volt control system, same system that you'd use to control an electric lighting system, but now we can fully modulate daylight levels from 100% daylight down to about 0.5% daylight. So the intent being in a classroom setting, actually our typical classroom solutions are designed to modulate from 100% daylight down to about 1% daylight, which is sufficient to block out all the daylight that we're not interfering with projection, images, or screens in a classroom. But we still have sufficient daylight, even when it's fully dimmed, the teacher can read facial expressions of the students. Also, more importantly, since it is an electrical component, if we had a power failure or a brownout or some emergency where the building lost power and we needed to get people out of that building, 1% daylight is still sufficient for emergency levels of illumination that people have emergency egress. It's designed for that purpose. Now, in the residential sector, we have products that also provide, again, daylight dimmer, but we can actually do it through solar power. So we have systems then that connect through a solar cell that's mounted on the outside of the flashing, so the element that holds our dome in place on the rooftop, and then using a remote control, they can homeowners can modulate daylight levels in their bedrooms or family rooms or however they want to control that space. So a full level of control over daylight, which is amazing, and it's all done through optics. And then at nighttime, yes, we have introduced our LED kits as well. So they're highly optimized LED emitters that we can integrate into the ceiling fixture of the product that allows us now to provide equivalent levels of illumination at night that we would get during the day, but it's through controllable LED light, also dimmable. So again, it would connect to a low voltage control system or a wall switch that would allow the occupants now to modulate electric light as daylight starts to wane.
Can you integrate your product with a managed control system?
Absolutely. So we've designed the system to use kind of an open architecture concept so that any control system will interface with our products without an issue.
Since your product takes no energy to run because it's solar light coming through, can you integrate this product into either a net zero energy design or a passive house design?
Your questions have been really thorough. I think we've hopefully I've been able to touch upon all the key technologies of the Solatube product. And I guess key other issues or what's kind of fun is that obviously in today's energy efficient and net zero desired designs, the Solatube product can actually, or Solatube International can support that process very easily. So we are designed to, or we've actually produced all the critical tools and resources to allow the architects and engineers and end users to apply daylight with the same ease that you would apply electric lighting. So we have relative photometry, like lighting equipment, but our photometry can account for sky condition and solar position. So we can actually replicate or predict the throughput of light from a Solatube product based on any sky condition or any hour of the year using real weather data. We've also innovated the use of BSDF data files to allow us to integrate in today's emerging calculation tools that are using radiance or ray trace analysis and determination of daylight utilization within a space. So we have products, or I should say data sets to aid in that. We also have innovated robust BIM, BIM model libraries that allow architects and engineers to effectively design in Solatube products in the 3D environment for ensuring that they don't have space conflicts with other mechanical systems and piping and structure, et cetera, in a building. So we have a lot of resources to allow the architects and engineers to effectively apply this daylighting solution, as well as to be able to analyze its performance over the course of the year or over the life of the building.
Where can Rated Green members find your products?
Excellent question. So Solatube is, first of all, we're a global company. So our world headquarters is in San Diego. We're actually located in the city of Vista, California. And so in our campus here in California is where we produce all of our product for worldwide consumption. We are in 122 countries today. And so regardless of where you are, you have access to Solatube products, as well as installation and design services as well. For the residential marketplace, products are available typically through your local lumber yards. So most building material distribution centers, so lumber yards, would probably have access to Solatube products. And so if you were to ask specifically for Solatube, they could work with our residential sales entities to get product ordered and delivered. More importantly, for the homeowner, we have a global network of what we term a premier dealer. They are companies, small businesses that provide installed services to the homeowner. So a homeowner can call up one of our premier dealers, and from our website, you can actually find your local premier dealer, contact them, and then they can do either a physical on-site or even a virtual consultation now during COVID to identify how a Solatube product could be applied to their homes to make their lives better. And so in that scenario, once a homeowner chooses the product and they determine where they want to put it, our premier dealer CICs can come out and typically install a Solatube solution in under 2 hours and be in and out of the home. From a commercial standpoint or institutional standpoint, we have then our commercial departments and distributors that then work directly with the architects and engineers and building owners to design in the product. So they are consultants that can come in and do full-on education on daylight and then actually work with the architects to determine the best lighting solution, daylighting solution for that specific building. And then our distributors are typically, they are actually certified installers as well, but they can also work with general contractors and subcontractors to train installation teams on how to appropriately install Solatubes in the end. So basically, many different sources. It all depends on where you are in the decision process, or whether you're a building owner or engineer or architect. We have sales networks and specialists who can help you with your design and ensure that the product then ultimately gets properly installed in your facility.
Thanks for your time today, and thanks for explaining how Solatube works and how it can benefit our Rated Green members.
Well, again, we certainly appreciate today and the opportunity to speak with you today. Hopefully, we've been able to add a little insight into Solatube International and the products and how they get applied. And we're here to help you and your viewers get daylight applied to their buildings. So thank you.
Solatube did a great job explaining how their product works and also how natural daylighting works. I want you to give them a thumbs up for all their hard work and contributing to this video. For your convenience, we've loaded up some more videos off to the right. And if you have not already, hit the subscribe button and click the notification. That way you get instant notifications when we release new videos just like this one. Thanks again, and see you next time.